What happens when losing unvaccinated workers means losing too much business for US companies? The Omicron variant is being detected in states across America. But are we really facing the winter of severe illness and death that some have predicted? And what of the blossoming bromance between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin? I look at the mistakes of the former Soviet Union that Communist China says it must avoid at all costs. Hello and welcome to The Wide Angle. I'm Brendan Fallon. Let me tell you, I have a bang-up episode for you today. We're going to look at the blossoming bromance between two of the baddest kids on the block, the Russian head of state, Vladimir Putin, and his Chinese regime counterpart, Xi Jinping. But first, let's see how Amtrak has bucked Biden's vax mandate and if the Omicron variant really lives up to all the hype. You can click on the link in the chat or the comments to subscribe to my newsletter. This way you won't miss the next episode. On December 14th, Amtrak said it will suspend its COVID-19 vaccine mandate for employees. As such, it no longer expects its services to be disrupted in January. Amtrak Chief Executive Bill Flynn said unvaccinated employees can get tested instead. This was stated in a memo obtained by the Epoch Times. He also said that 500 workers are unvaccinated. Amtrak will revert back to its original August vaccine mandate. This allows for regular testing of unvaccinated workers. Amtrak is a quasi-public corporation. It receives some federal funding. It was set to fire about 500 unvaccinated workers in January. This was expected to result in service cuts. Amtrak said it expected cuts because it didn't have enough staff to operate its trains. But with the decision to suspend the vaccine mandate, the cuts can be averted, it said. Meanwhile, on December 16th, President Biden told unvaccinated Americans they face a winter of severe illness and death.
For unvaccinated, we are looking at a winter of severe illness and death.
Then he concluded with a rousing rendition of "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." Not really. Biden is urging Americans to use the vaccines, including boosters, as their protective shield against Omicron. The whole point is Omicron is here. It's going to start to spread much more rapidly in the beginning of the year, Biden said. And the only real protection is to get your shots. But then there was this. At the beginning of December, at least 10 cases of COVID-19 were found on a cruise liner disembarking in New Orleans. Yet according to the Louisiana Department of Health, all of the crew members and passengers had been fully vaccinated. The Norwegian breakaway cruise ship had departed from New Orleans on November 28th. It made stops in Mexico, Honduras, and Belize. The Department of Health said there were more than 3,200 people on board. Alongside that, on December 10th, the Center for Disease Control released a report on the Omicron variant, one which is somewhat out of whack with Biden's disease and death for the unvaccinated prediction. The report said that the handful of Omicron cases reported in the US had been relatively mild. It also said that the majority of these were found in people fully vaccinated. So far, there's been just one confirmed case of someone dying from the Omicron variant across the whole world, which brings me to this poignant depiction of the complex dynamic between government, media, and Omicron from the Patriot Post. Here we see the government and media prodding Omicron with a stick. I guess they want it to cause the kind of panic that justifies drastic policies and sells newspapers. Now on the international relations front, there is a captivating bromance blossoming between Russian President Vladimir Putin and the head of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, Xi Jinping. On December 15th, the two heads of state shared an online video call. They talked about the recent frictions between one another and the West. Alongside this, Putin confirmed that he will attend the opening ceremony of the Beijing Winter Olympics. I think we can probably all recall a certain type of kid back in elementary school, the kid with behavioral problems, the kind of kid who you'd come back from school assembly and find he's eaten everyone's lunch, or he's urinated on the teacher's desk. I think we've all had an experience with this kind of kid. The Chinese Communist Party on the global stage is this kid, and his mum's about to throw him a birthday party, aka the Beijing Winter Olympics. No surprise, the other kids don't want to go. They've told their mums, "I know he's got a big swimming pool and the latest Xbox games, but I still don't want to go. I know if I go and I pretend I like him, he's going to act like even more of an idiot going forward." So it looks like the problem child, aka the Chinese Communist Party, is going to suffer a little comeuppance, that he's going to be playing Xbox alone. Then suddenly comes along Nelson from The Simpsons, aka Russia, the former Soviet Union. He's just come out of suspension for forcing the preschoolers to smoke his dad's cigarettes. And he says, "Sure, I'll come to your party." This somewhat offsets the comeuppance the bad kid was supposed to get. Kremlin spokesman Vladimir Peskov commented on the exchange between Xi and Putin. He said they respectively praised relations between China and Russia. Putin called Sino-Russian relations a new model of cooperation, one that does not interfere with the other's internal affairs, but respects its interests. Xi praised Putin's, quote, firm support for China, or rather the Chinese Communist Party, in protecting fundamental state interests. He also praised Putin's being firmly opposed to creating obstacles between the two countries. Xi said, I appreciate it very much. So all in all, there was a lot of praising and backslapping going on. To some, this might sound like the start of the next great bromance, and I hate to add a sour note to this touching exchange, but we all know what happens when the two problem children get together. There might be a brief honeymoon period where they join forces to wreak havoc, but after the cake's been eaten and the toys are broken, it's only a matter of time before they turn on one another. Lots of people, corporations, and governments thought that they could trust and be friends with the Chinese Communist Party. Sri Lanka thought that the CCP was helping it to build a big, beautiful shipping port. But now, thanks to some Shanghai back-alley swindling, that port is now in control of the CCP. It's no secret that in recent years, China and Russia have both been gradually adjusting their foreign policies. They've continued to challenge the US on the fronts of global economic and political order. At the same time, both have been subject to US sanctions. Russia faces international sanctions for annexing Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula in 2014. And in case there was any question of communist culture being alive and well in Russia, the country also faces sanctions for imprisoning opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Some people would say poisoning him as well. The Chinese Communist Party faces sanctions for serious human rights abuses, particularly the mass detention of Uyghurs in internment camps in Xinjiang. There's also its suppression of the democracy movement in Hong Kong. Putin is quoted as saying, in February, we will finally be able to meet in person in Beijing. He called Xi his dear friend. Well, we can only imagine what those two crazy cats will get up to when they're together in the same zip code. I can tell you that's one late-night karaoke session I wouldn't want to be tuned into. Xi Jinping has repeatedly said that the Soviet Union's collapse is a profound lesson for the CCP. I know what you're thinking right now. China's facing internal political turmoil. It's got serious economic problems. It's the most unpopular kid in the global schoolyard. So the CCP must be starting to do a little self-reflection. It must be looking at how totalitarian control, mass deception of the people, and exploitation on a global scale didn't pan out all that well in the end for the Soviet Union. You'd think it might occur to Xi Jinping to rein in the brutal communist apparatus a little. Not quite. In fact, if anything, it seems like he wants to crank things up a notch. In an unpublished speech, Xi Jinping rhetorically asked, why did the Soviet Union disintegrate? Why did the Soviet Communist Party collapse? One important reason is that the ideals and beliefs had been shaken. He said that political corruption, ideological heresy, and military disloyalty caused the collapse of the Soviet Communist Party. He said it's what ultimately disintegrated the Soviet Union. Basically, they weren't communist enough. So being a state-run mafia organization, quintessential schoolyard bully at home and abroad, disappearing people who criticize you, ethnic cleansing, murdering certain groups of Chinese people, and selling their organs for profit, well, that's just how we roll, is what the CCP is saying. But political corruption, ideological heresy, and military disloyalty, that's what we've got to look out for. Xi Jinping has said those things led to the collapse of the Soviet Communist Party and ultimately to the disintegration of the Soviet Union, from Xi's standpoint. Xi Jinping also recently said Gorbachev announced the dissolution of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union with a single word, and the party was gone. In the end, no one was a man, no one came out to fight. I wonder if anyone told Xi that the Soviet Union had already sent to the Gulag or killed a lot of those people who like to stand up and fight. From Xi Jinping's comments, from his repeated references to loyalty to the party, it's clear that he has deep-seated fears. He's afraid the CCP will follow in the steps of the former Soviet Union, that it will eventually disintegrate. Personally, I'd say that horse, in many ways, has already bolted. The Chinese Communist Party is on borrowed time, but that's not to say there isn't a future ahead, and quite a bright future at that, without the baggage of the communism for China and the Chinese people. That's it for this edition of The Wide Angle. I invite you to like the video and subscribe. You can also subscribe to my newsletter at the top of the live chat or comment section to make sure you catch the next episode. I'll see you next time.